Welcome, everybody, to 914 Wired. I'm Peter Moses with my co host Charlie Stern sitting next to me in our Pelham studio, and our Dina Seward, who is the doyen of Yonkers and is holding down the fort in our Southwest Yonkers Bureau. How are you guys doing today?
Doing great. I tell
You
you,
look,
I gotta take my hat off to, I should say my do-rag off to Charlie for being able to get us right on track at the last minute for a lot of technical glitches. But we're just happy to be here and happy to be on the air.
so the only little gap that I can't close here is our guest is on the phone. We're gonna hear him. We'll hear him. Our Dina will hear him. Everybody can hear everybody except he won't hear our Dina. So if our Dina asks a question, we'll have to relay it. Okay.
Right.
Other than that,
we have
we're
with
good.
us today a very, very special guest, and it was a last minute guest. But anyone who knows anything about Bronx politics and New York City politics knows the name Stanley Schlein. He is a doctoral professor, if you will, of Bronx politics. Would you argue with that moniker, Stanley?
I never pat myself on the back, but I have been around a long time, so certainly by age, if not profundity, I'm a Bronx politics doctor.
Well, I've known you since 1984 when I first went to the Post and was the Bronx reporter. If you needed to know something going on in the Bronx, politically or otherwise, Stanley Schlein was the guy to go to. So what are the races going on in New York City for Democrats in 2023?
Next week.
Next week.
Next week, well, we're in the, as you well know, we are in the throes of early voting now. Started on this past weekend. And the two races that have drawn everybody's attention is at least the two predominant ones are the Marjorie Velasquez race in the Bronx, the incumbent member of the council from the Throgs Neck, Pelham Bay, Morris Park area, and probably a few other conjoining neighborhoods. And the one in Brooklyn, Justin Brannan, where he is running against a former Democrat, and that one is deemed by most observers to be a very close race as well.
Yeah, the turncoat and your candidate, yes.
Yeah.
So I gotta say, it's very interesting that these are not names that I recognize. This is the news gulch of not having a weekly anything of New York City. Like the New York Times used to have a section where you'd get this kind of news, and now I don't see it.
Yeah, so Stanley, how is it that you get the word out for candidates when you have the Riverdale Press, you have a couple of weekly Bronx newspapers, and you have some online Bronx newspapers? How do you, in the current media climate, get information out on your candidates?
It is done now by social media, by texting, by communication, and the old-fashioned retail. Believe it or not, people are still going community door-to-door communications. But really, social media has taken over a lot of this, and the candidates are doing their best. The independent expenditures done by labor in particular are flooding the mailboxes with media, with letters and palm cards and advocacy for their candidates. And that's what we're facing. That's what we're seeing going out there.
It's very frightening. It's very frightening the way the world has changed, because it used to be, it wasn't all that difficult to get the word out there. You had so many different venues you could go to, and that has disappeared now.
Well, the net result of it disappearing is reflected in the turnout. The turnout has never been as low as it currently is. Even in the past general election, but now you're talking 15% turnout of registered voters, maybe 20% maximum. It is horrific.
And what do you attribute that to? Because you talk about social media taking the place of the traditional media, but maybe it's not working as well because there's low voter turnout. So what do you think are the top 2 or 3 reasons people aren't paying attention to these local elections?
I think they are not seeing a critical drive on key issues. I mean, what is the issue in New York City now? If you you take away from that all the international issues, it is the migrant problems, the migrant housing, and the other is the economy, but that's generic. But you see very, very significant reflection, particularly as we saw recently in Staten Island when they're trying to make a homeless shelter out of a former Catholic school facility. Now, even in today's news, out in Brooklyn, very critical use of the former federal property, trying to make a migrant shelter community out of that. That's what's getting and garnering people's attention.
Ardina, you probably have questions on this topic. Go ahead.
Yes, endless questions about the migrant issue. Because is that, Stanley, going to swing moderate Democrats over to the Republican side, in your opinion?
Okay, hang on. So, Stanley,
Stanley, can you hear that?
Yeah, Stanley, you probably didn't hear that. Okay, so
I did not hear her.
Ardina's question is, will the issues around migrants move moderate Democrats?
I believe you're seeing moderate Democrats who are subscribing to the NIMBY theory, not my backyard. It is reflective in every instance where a significant shelter is being, or a significant community of shelters is being proffered. And as I said, Brooklyn and Staten Island, which would have been in this particular community, I would say moderate to conservative Democrats are absolutely outraged, and they are voting. We will see how they vote, but they certainly are litigating against those facilities.
But
and the mayor has to deal with it. It's unfortunate.
Go ahead.
The budget of the city of New York is reflective of the lack of financial resources to deal with these issues, and as they say, the chickens are going to come home to roost in 2024 when you see severe budget cuts around basic service issues.
Time out. Go ahead, Ardina.
We're already starting to see budget cuts now. I mean, we're starting to see budget cuts in NYPD, budget cuts in FDNY, budget cuts in the school system, based on the just unfathomable numbers that are now being tossed out about how much it costs to house the whole migrant population. But what I'm confused about is, as far as the voting issue is concerned, does that mean that moderate Democrats are just not going to vote out of apathy, or are they going to creep over on a one-off to the Republican side?
Okay, time out. So, Stanley, I'm going to relay the question. Ardina is asking, will those moderate Democrats switch? Will they vote for...
and will they take the time to vote?
Or are they going to just not vote, or are they going to vote for Republicans?
There's an expression in the Bronx, using my worst English, they'll both, B-O-F. I think they're not going to vote, and I think they are troubled by the Democratic model, which hasn't addressed this issue. I don't know the latter, but I certainly think there is a reflection on their lack of coming to the polling sites.
So you're worried?
I am. It's very difficult to get the votes out. And, to segue into 2024, you're going to have congressional elections. And that's going to be reflective there as well. And that really is about the control of the houses. We all know it.
Right. Well, the Democrats certainly spit the bit in 2022 congressionally. We lost 6 seats, most of which we never should have lost, and yet we did anyway. And I don't know. I mean, I'm sure that Santos is going to lose on Long Island, but I don't know about Lawler in Westchester. I don't know if he's going to lose. He's a disaster, and I don't know what you think about Jamal Bowman going forward.
Well, I'm going to throw it right back to my friends in Westchester. Depends on what the particular redistricting plan looks like. And as you know, there is a Court of Appeals case being heard on November 15th as to the viability of the current lines. It is likely, people are predicting, that the existing lines are going to be thrown out by the Court of Appeals that frankly verified the master's lines not more than a few months ago. The Independent Redistricting Commission is currently redrawing lines in anticipation of a determination by the Court of Appeals. And if that were to happen, you'll have another round of litigation, and I suspect that may wind up having 3 separate primary elections in 2024, and a latter one in the summer for the congressional.
All right,
If the lines are changed, what happens to Bowman's lines? What happens to your county executive? Is he being encouraged vigorously to take on Bowman?
He is actually. He is.
Right. So it's I think these are very serious issues. And again, it conflates into the national issues as well.
So, can you parse out why it would take 3 primaries to resolve this? If the Court of Appeals throws out the current lines, wouldn't the Court of Appeals then go back to the independent redistricting committee and see what they came up with, and then say, okay, take that to your state legislature and have the state legislature approve it, and then agree on one primary day? Why do you think it takes 3 primary days?
Because right now, the existing law calls for the first day to circulate petitions in 2024 to be the last week in the month of February. If the lines are thrown out by the Court of Appeals in November, there is no way on this planet Earth that will be sufficient time to craft new lines, to have hearings on those new lines, to adopt those lines, to litigate those lines, and be prepared to craft maps in accordance with those new lines in order to have a February primary circulation of petitions.
So time out. So what you're saying is the logistics of this, I'm trying to follow, would be you're saying there would be a primary at the regularly scheduled time anyway for other offices?
Correct.
And then another primary just for the congressional offices that were impacted by the redistricting.
Very true. That's exactly right.
And what would be the third primary you alluded to?
I think the third primary is we're having coming up is the presidential primary too for this calendar year.
In 2024. I see.
In 2024.
Right. And is it possible then, I'm not an attorney, but could the court just say, let's just stop this whole circus? No, I guess they can't put the congressional primaries into the presidential primary.
No, you can't. Cannot.
No. So then there could end up being 3 primaries next year.
I don't think have you read, I haven't read that anywhere. Stanley, have you read that anywhere?
About what I just said?
Yeah.
It is the best unkept secret among election attorneys that we're all predicting this.
So we have a 914 Wired exclusive. I'm so happy we called Stanley Schlein today.
It's a great afternoon. Hey, Stanley, I'm going to ask you a question. I'm just kind of pivoting here, but since you know Bronx politics, if you don't know the answer, I'll edit it out.
Oh, he knows the answer.
No, maybe you might not. This is an obscure
Oh,
one.
please.
Are you familiar with e-scooters and a pilot program to run e-scooters in the Bronx?
No, I really don't.
Okay.
To run them in the Bronx or to seize them in the Bronx?
So apparently there was a pilot program involving 3 different service providers of e-scooters and e-bikes in like the East Bronx. A company called VO is one of them. I don't know who the other 2 were. I got on one of these bikes this weekend, and I was at the border of the Bronx and Westchester, and what I discovered is that they geo-fence the service. So as soon as I rode the bike over the border from Bronx to Pelham Manor, the bike stopped working.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I was wondering if you knew anything about the pilot program.
No, now I'm failing you all. I don't know that.
You're not failing us, Stanley. It was a left field question.
You helped us tremendously here today. You can't know everything. Nobody does. So thank you.
Well, but Charlie,
my pleasure speaking to you all.
The whole.
I remember the good old days of VOX. Believe me, I do.
But to the point
I'll
of
give you a little VOX history lesson here.
Please.
Many moons ago, when Bill Clinton was running for president and made the statement with Hillary, and she got up there and said, I'm not staying home and in fact, baking cookies, I think was her statement. She came to Arthur Avenue the following day to sort of backtrack off of that, which was considered to be an obdurate comment, went to Madonia's Bakery on Arthur Avenue, pulled bread out of the oven as a joke.
I was there. I was there. I was there.
And then had lunch at a restaurant on Arthur Avenue at the end of the block, and VOX had the exclusive covering that Bill Clinton and Hillary event.
Was that at Patsy's Rigoletto?
You got it. Spot on.
I know the Bronx. So.
But that's where you all were. You set it up, and it was a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful event. Very well covered, talking about exclusives.
Yeah, I love that.
And Peter, Ardina, you had another.
Yeah,
comment.
I just
But now
wanted
you're
to.
showing your age as I am, so the fact that we remember that.
I know how old you are, Stanley. I'm not going to say anything.
No, I just wanted to reference the e-bike issue. E-bikes are not getting the best PR right now because they are, according to FDNY, they're responsible for causing a lot of fires. They are being used by delivery men. They're taking the batteries out, lithium batteries. They're bringing them inside their apartment houses, and they're starting horrific fires. So I don't know how well any sort of e-bike program is going to be supported in New York City right now, given the bad PR. I mean, there's certainly an efficient means of getting around the city, but, somebody's got to be able to deal with the danger factor.
Sure. So, Stanley, I don't know how much of that you were able to catch, but Ardina is basically talking about the e-bike concept and saying that it's gotten some bad publicity because of the explosion of lithium batteries and other mishaps and misfirings that have happened. Is that that a topic that you hear about in your practice at all? Did we lose Stanley?
Do we
Stanley,
still have
you
him?
there? We lost him.
We may not have him anymore. He may have signed off.
No,
but
he didn't sign off. He didn't sign off.
Okay.
See if he's on speaker.
He wasn't. We lost him.
Oh, okay. It's the
I
excitement.
got disconnected there, sir.
There we go. Oh, sorry about that. Sorry. Thank you. You're back. Stanley, Ardina was talking about the e-bikes. Is the topic something that you hear much about in your practice, working with politicians? Transportation issues are always big, but the e-bikes have gotten some bad. There's been some bad publicity because of the fires related to the lithium-ion
Yeah,
batteries.
look, that was the cause of several fires, in particular vulnerable neighborhoods in the Bronx. It has been horrific here. Also, you see a lot of the e-bikes being seized by the police department, given the way they are being running in the streets without licenses, without, helmets up and down the sidewalks. And you'll see task force of New York City Police Department with vans seizing them significantly. But that is an issue, again, because of the public safety component, both ends of the equation. Yeah. Safety for the bikes and safety for the pedestrians.
Speaking of safety for the bikes, one thing I found, an article in the Bronx Times when I was looking this up, apparently they did some geofencing around the Bronx River Parkway because people were throwing scooters and bikes into the river.
Yeah.
That's by the way, that's a time-honored thing prior to the advent of these bikes. People used to dump cars into the Bronx River.
That used to be. I remember the cleanup program of the Bronx River. You could take in a magnet and pull out half the trash. Old cars and other vehicles. You got that right.
And the other cars that were being dumped were dumped under the Whitestone Bridge, along with mob bodies.
Yeah, now it's a beautiful Ferry Point Park. So.
Have they cleaned it up, by the way?
Yes, it's a beautiful looking park right now. It's, again, as you know, is adjoining the golf course there. So,
well, I have to take a little bit of responsibility for that. When Giuliani was showcasing Jack Nicholas at City Hall, I was the only news person there who knew the area. So I said to Jack Nicholas, I said, "So you're going to be doing this great stuff over on the east side of the Hutchinson River Parkway by the Whitestone Bridge. What are you doing on the west side? You do know there is a city park, Ferry Point Park, that police vehicles can't go around the circumference because there are potholes bigger than an NYPD vehicles. There are no working toilets there. 3/4 of the lights around the circumference or in the interior of the park are not working, and it's a dump. And what are you going to do about that? And he said, I knew nothing about that. No one mentioned anything about Ferry Point Park. That sounds like a city issue. When the press conference was over, I went outside and Nicholas followed me outside and said, how serious an issue is this? I said, well, if you're talking about doing something in the Bronx, then do something for the Bronx. Not just in the Bronx, do something for the Bronx. And Giuliani was furious with me when Nicholas left. I went into his office. He goes, why did you snooker me like that? I didn't snooker you. I mean, no one in that room besides me knows anything about the Bronx.
That's true.
And I'm happy to see that it was fixed up, because that was an eyesore for so many years.
It is so well used now, and there are more improvements coming. As you know, the Bally's has taken over the golf course from the Trump organization. They're in collaboration with the Parks Department to improve the park areas around there. And, they're being one of the bidders, of course, for the casino license. Full disclosure, I represent them, but putting that aside.
I knew that already, by the way.
I'm not going to keep that a secret from this conversation.
No.
But speaking
go ahead, Adina.
but speaking of parks, how serious is Mayor Adams, pardon me, about providing tents for migrants to sleep in parks in New York City?
You're going to have to
Ardina was asking, speaking of New York City parks, how serious is Mayor Adams about building tent cities in city parks?
Well, if you recall, his first proposal at the outset of the migrant transportation from Texas to New York City was building up a tent city in Orchard Beach's parking lot.
That didn't go well.
I had the over-under on how many days it would take till it got flooded. It was the first rainstorm. It got flooded. They tore it down, and they moved on in their equation.
God doesn't want people to mess with the Bronx anymore.
But it's illegal to do it, by the way. You need a state bill, a state piece of legislation to alienate parkland. That is as strong a piece of law as there is. It's in the state constitution, and consequently, you cannot do that legally.
Hey, Stanley, our time is up, but I'd like to ask you a question. Can we come to you in the future after this election cycle and learn some more at the feet of the master?
Well, your kindness is more than appreciated. I'd love to continue an ongoing dialogue with all of you, and
Thank you.
We'll have all three of us speaking at that time.
Exactly.
Take care.
Wonderful.
Thank you, Stanley. Have a great day.
This has been 718 Wire.